And so a lot of times when we get saved, we're looking at all the benefit and not realizing that he says in this world you will have trouble, and that persecution comes and hardship comes.
Welcome back. It's another Friday, and you won't believe it. We've got another pastor who showed up. It's crazy.
We might actually make it to the whole. This is so unlike us.
This is Anchored and Devoted. I'm Pastor Joseph, and
I'm Pastor Jer.
Ooh, and we have Lonnie Harris with us from
in the house.
That's right. We're keeping it still in Maryland, and he's got the amazing title. It's really just, a suit cover for worship ministry. Like, it's kind of like care and counseling. Like, everything kind of fits under it. So I'm excited to hear your story, brother. And I'm also excited to hear what God's been doing lately. So we'll let you get started with the easy softball question of, how did you come to Christ? It's open-ended question. I want to hear your story. Really, you can take, some time. You don't need to rush it, but don't, I don't want the 50-minute version either.
Right.
The Jesus Church version.
Yeah. Well, I was, born into a household that was not a Christian household. My parents, I think my parents did drugs together, drank together, partied together. But God's hand was still in it and was in my life even before I got saved. Even seeing my dad's life and hearing his testimony, I could see God was directing him. But we were.
I came to Christ. Was this before you or after you?
This was actually after me. I mean, before me, but later, but God had been pulling him, and directing him, and he was starting to change the course of his life, and so so we were in the projects in a place called Newtown 19 in Annapolis, which has since been condemned, I guess when I was really young
was condemned. Yeah, Newtown 20 is now gone as well.
Yep. Oh, really? Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. Hacker finally came in and did a little bit more good there.
Yeah. Newtown 19 is now Admiral Oaks, I think. So, but we he moved us out of there, into the suburbs, into Pasadena, Maryland. So I grew up in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, and at that point, from what I hear, it was like kind of Ku Klux Klan territory back in the day, and didn't have as nearly the amount of diversity it has now. But anyway, so I grew up there, and again, I have early memories of my parents arguing and fighting, and because what had happened is at some point along the way, my dad knew. He came to a point where he worked at the Naval Academy, and he had some Christians around him that God put there in his life, and he knew before he got saved that this was true, but he thought he had to get his life cleaned up. Well, finally he was convinced that no, God saves you and cleans you up, and so he brought that into the home. But my mom wasn't ready for it. They were to transition from a party life to a Christian life was a big transition for her. So
how old were you then?
I was probably like 5, 6, something like that. And so I have these early memories, like visions in my there was traumatic, memories of them fighting, memories of the police coming to our house, to break up domestic disputes. Mm-hmm. Memories of just being a lot of craziness at home. At some point she left when I was 7, I guess just before then, it was around that time frame. I don't know if I was 7 or 8, but this is where I came to Christ, because I overheard my dad witnessing to my sister, who was about 6 years older than me. And, he was a new believer still, and he wanted to change the family. And so I'm eavesdropping, thinking she's getting in trouble and I'm going to get something juicy and sharing the gospel. And so, in John chapter 3, it says, Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, and he says, when it's true, because it's like the spirit is like, it's like the wind. You see, you don't see it, but you can see the effects of it. You can hear the sound that it makes, and you can see the wind. And that's what it was like. I went and I just asked Jesus into my heart, but immediately it's not like I had this life of sin, but I mean, like I wasn't drinking as a 6-year-old, but
yes, I do though. That's hard. It's hard
there
for a
was
lot
some
of people.
taste.
I came to
Growing
Christ
up
at a
in that,
young age, as well, but it still is.
yeah. But growing up in that kind of house, there's a little tasting of this and that here and there, But anyway, but really, like I could see God had got a hold of my life because I'm watching Jimmy Swaggart on the TV all the time, listening to the Bible on cassette tape, and I had a recorder, and I would record myself preaching. I would love to get a hold of those tapes. Who knows what I was saying, but I knew that God was in my heart. I remember following my sister around and telling her friends that they're going to go to hell unless they turn, and receive Jesus, and no tact whatsoever, but excited. And so God got a hold of my life and just put me on a trajectory to continue to follow him. There's a long part of the story, which I won't go into, but most of my friends were unbelievers, and a big part of my testimony is how God kept me out of trouble, living in a world where there's a lot of secular influence in my life, and and so he was there from the beginning and walked me through a lot of craziness. Yeah. So I'll close it off with that. Maybe unless there's any clarifying questions.
Just curious, was your dad was teaching at the academy?
No. He was in public works at the academy.
Okay.
So he was working in the garage. He's a mechanic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Just curious.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
what was his life like as your mom's gone, your dad's trying to rebuild the family identity around Christ? What was his life like in those years after the Lord got a hold of him, and how did that affect you?
Totally. It's again one of those stories where you see the influence of the Spirit because things are different. He took us aside. He tried to do this every day. I don't know if it happened. In my mind, it was every day, but we would sit down, me, my sister, and him. He would open up the Bible and he would just read. We would read a chapter or two a day, And it was our family devotion. It was my dad reading the Bible. And so I remember him teaching me how to say the Lord's Prayer before bed. I remember him, so those were things. He was always, I remember driving to places like every morning during the summer. I lived in I was taken care of mostly by my grandmother in Bestgate. And I remember those drives, he always had Christian radio on. So I was always preaching, always WRBS, like the,
I was going to ask, was it WRBS or was it the really old one, WFSI?
It was both. But yeah, I remember listening to the preaching and the stories and the music, and it just seeped in. So there was that, and yeah, I would say, and then definitely I remember seeing him struggle too. He was struggling with quitting smoking, but he did eventually, and I made a deal with him. If I stopped sucking my fingers, he would stop smoking, and I stopped before he did. but eventually he stopped.
So where did you guys end up in church? How quickly was that, and what was that like for you?
It was right from the bat. The guy who led him to Christ was a part of Grace Independent Baptist Church, Crownsville, Maryland. And so that's where we went. And so that's where I grew up. It's the only other church I've been a part of my whole life. And so I got discipled by many Sunday school teachers and Awana's teachers and through that time.
Awesome. Dave, back to you.
Well, how did you end up, serving here? And you can introduce yourself as far as what you do there. But how did you end up coming to Forcey?
Yeah. So, right. So I'll put that in the story. Basically, when I was going through I guess through my high school years, I did child evangelism fellowship. Um, and and so during the summers, like I'm doing this, they call them summer missionaries, learning how to share the gospel and just, falling in love with ministry. Keep in mind, I was a good Christian kid, I knew the right answers in Sunday school and stuff, but most of my friends were unbelievers. And so I was walking that line, trying to fit into that secular world with the music I listened to. I was probably, when I started CEF, I was 13.
Okay.
So all through my middle school years and high school, most of high school years, I was kind of trying to live that double life. And, I did their full, they had a 5-year rotation. I did all 5 years. And so, 9th through 12th grade. And then the first year of college, I think I did it. It may have been 8th through 12th. I can't remember exactly, but learned the gospel. And so I ended up going to, Washington Bible College, as I was trying to decide what I wanted to do for a living. I knew that I loved the gospel. I loved music, and I loved languages. And I thought being a missionary was the thing that could bring that all together. I did not want to be a pastor, which is what I am now.
Amen.
Did not want to be a pastor. I thought, who runs into that? You guys are crazy. I grew up in a small church where the pastor had everything. He was the only staff member, and he had a part-time secretary. And I just didn't want that. It seemed like you're inviting trouble. Throughout my college years, I started as a music major. But after my first year, I thought, I don't want to be a professional musician either. I love music, but I want to use it. I don't want to have everything wrapped up in it. So I switched to pastoral or pre-seminary major. And I thought, I'll be a missionary, but in the mission field, I'll probably be preaching and stuff. So I should learn this stuff. The professor who had a lot of influence on me, what he showed me through his church was that the very reason that I was running away from pastoral ministry was the very reason that people need good pastors. So I'm running away from it thinking, oh, all these people's problems and people hurting and struggling and everybody bringing all of that to you. And that's hard. And who wants to run into that? And, but I remember thinking, God changed my heart into thinking people are people. People are sheep. I'm a sheep. That's why we need good pastors. And so, so I thought, okay, I'm not going to run away from it, but that's still not what I want to do. I'm going to be a missionary. I'm going to translate. I'm going to be a Wycliffe Bible translator, And, but after, I'm probably saying more than I need to say here, but after, I got married when I was in college, my beautiful wife, April, and my last year of college. And when we got into that first year of seminary, where we were both training to become, Wycliffe Bible translators, we thought, let's learn the languages first. During that year, a lot of traumatic stuff happened. My grandmother died. My wife was diagnosed with cancer, with a 33% chance of living. Just things were devastating. And so in that whole mix of things, the people that I was around, God used those circumstances to keep me in seminary, keep me moving and going. And it got to a point where while she was being treated, I continued in college and in seminary. She eventually stopped because she was dealing with all these treatments, and it was clear that God was going to keep us here. And so it's this question of, what am I going to do? I thought, well, I will just continue on the academic route. And so it came to my last year, and I had an internship, and half of it was teaching, working with my professors to help with teaching Greek and Hebrew. Okay. And then the other half of it was pastoral internship under Dr. Phil Powers here at Forcey. So keep in mind, I'm still a part of the church I grew up in. And the pastor there was thinking, maybe he'll be here one of these days. And well, anyway, I did this internship to decide whether I wanted to go the academic route or the pastoral route. And God did something really special as I was here. He just started he lit a fire that he fanned into a flame towards the people who were here, the young adults who were here, I didn't put out a resume or application any other place, but I felt like I want to be there with those people, and that there was an opening, and I applied, and it just. My wife didn't want to be married to a pastor. I didn't want to be a pastor, but he changed both of our hearts, and
Wow.
because it was supposed to be here, and so that's how we came here, and diverse church, interracially married. That was really important to us, and just a beautiful kind of situation that we came into here, and so that's how I ended up at Forcey. I will just say what I do here now is I started as singles pastor, young adults pastor. I moved to missions pastor after about 10 years, missions and outreach. I'm still over missions and outreach. I also do our benevolence ministry, but now I'm also the worship pastor here.
You get paid for 4 jobs, right?
So I'm full circle.
Pastor listening just started laughing.
You've been promoted.
I'm the Dave Joseph of Forcey.
You got to across
that's
all
right.
departments.
That's right. We're going to give you an office in every room.
That's right. You do a good job, we'll give you more work. Don't worry. Don't worry. You will.
Wow.
We will make sure you are fruitful here.
So just to give some love to our own water, which prof are you supporting the Greek under?
Dr. Holliker, helped him. No, that was it. He was who was Dr. Edgar? Sorry,
It was correct.
Dr. Edgar, and then I worked with Professor, probably Doctor now, Dr. Meyer, Mark Meyer with the Hebrew stuff.
Okay, that's awesome. So were you MDiv track or you teach M?
MDiv, yep.
Okay. Wow.
I had to decide at that, at some point, and it was just like I'll either finish my MDiv and then go to like everybody's saying, go to apply to Catholic,
Right. Of course.
University, and but God took me the other direction.
I don't know if this was just me, but there was a huge difference between the MDiv and the THM students, just in terms of how tired they were. Like the MDiv students were bedraggled, right? But the THM guys were like walking zombies. That was incredible. I was like, my hat's off to you guys.
I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't understand what they were doing. Like I just didn't know what is the goal. You could go to another school and get a doctorate there. It's like, why are you being punished here? And I remember the issues of what does it turn into was my question. I was like, does it turn into something that everyone knows? Because if I say I got a THM, no one in my family is going to know what that means.
Say, a master's. Okay.
Exactly right. That's right. A 4 years master's.
Yeah.
Working on this. Like,
So who was the prof at the college that helped you to zero in on the call that got on you?
His name was Jeff Carroll.
Okay.
Jeff Carroll. Yep. And just really had a big influence in my learning how to preach, and also and also deciding to be a pastor.
That's awesome. So you said you're over the singles ministry. True or false? Singles ministries in churches are really how to get married ministries. Yes or no?
Sometimes it can seem like that, right? Oh my goodness. Sometimes they crumble. It seems like in a couple of years. The way we set it up when we came, it had been through one of those iterations, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of it felt. I think the people in a part of it felt like leftovers, that they were trying to drag it on. And this is like, and so right away, I think we kind of realized that this is not a marriage, how to get married ministry. This is about using your singleness for your maximum potential to accomplish what God has called you to accomplish. And if you get married along the way, great. You're still welcome here, So it transitioned from a singles ministry to a young adult ministry where there were some young married couples, and people usually transitioned out once they started having kids.
So I asked that as a joke, right? Because that's what I do.
Right.
Apologies. However, I think it's really prescient for where we are today. The rate of marriage. The age of marriage continues to go higher and higher. The rate of marriage continues to fall lower and lower. The rate of having kids continues to fall lower and lower, even with those who are married. And there's also a sense of, I don't know if despair is even too strong a word. I think there's at least at the extreme a sense of despair, but there's also a sense of disconnection and confusion. And I don't mean in who am I, but just in what, what's going on and why isn't more happening. That is over the majority of our culture right now, and certainly is going to affect Christians in this age group of kind of the 18 to 35, where
right.
The average age for getting married now is moving closer and closer. I think it's crossed the 30-year-old mark yet, but it's getting closer to. Has it?
Yep, I think so.
Wow. So what you're talking about is, as important as it was when you were doing that, I think it's even more important now. Because, what you're talking about in following, being willing to do what he's called you to do, when it's uncomfortable, when it means learning a different language, or when it means not going into the field that you want to go into, and strapping on a yoke that you don't want to strap on, and saying, God, this isn't what I want. Why are you doing this to me? Marriage, singleness, they can both do the same thing. Whether you want to be married or whether you don't want to be married, it can carry that kind of weight with it. And the confusion and the questions of, where is God in this? What's he called me to be? Am I not fulfilling something? Am I missing something? Is there something wrong with me? I think is that fundamental question. Is there something wrong with me that God's not going to give me my dream, my hope, my vision until X, Y, or Z? And that's a very real struggle. That's a very real place to wrestle.
It is. And the truth is, like, it's a real part, like being able to wrestle with that issue and to handle it correctly is I think it's key to our discipleship too, because, as unbelievers, as young, immature, maybe people, our lives are self-oriented. So everything is about what do I want? And so to be able to learn to say my food is to do the will of the Father. Like I'll sign the blank check. God, you can fill in the terms, whatever. I'm just happy to do your will. I mean, it's one thing to say that, but when he says, all right, what if it means staying single? What if it means you can't have that job, you're going to have this job? What if it means you can't have kids? What if it's like, that's when the rubber hits the road, and it's like, well, what does discipleship and following Jesus really look like here? So it's a big deal.
Would you speak to that some more? Would you just hang out on that note for a minute and drop some word on us?
Yeah, I mean, he said, I think Luke 9:23, right? He says, if you want to be my follower, anyone who wants to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. And so a lot of times when we sign on to become a Christian, it's like, who wants to live forever? Everybody raises their hand. Who wants to have eternal life, and who wants to have God's resources? Like all of the blessings. We've raised our hand, but we're not so quick to raise our hand and says, who wants to to have trouble in this world, like who wants to lose their life for my sake? Come here where everyone will, you'll lose your family, or you lose your reputation. Like, we're signing up for loss, and I think that we're not naturally oriented that way. And so a lot of times when we get saved, we're looking at all the benefit and not realizing that he says, in this world you will have trouble, and that persecution comes and hardship comes. And yet he says in James chapter 1, count it all joy when you fall into these various trials and temptations and tests.
Yeah.
Because God uses that to make, to develop your patience, your perseverance, your faith. And so I just think that, an essential part of discipleship is learning to die daily, in little ways and big ways. It's the Jesus trajectory, where there's one author who talks about it as a J curve. His name's Paul Miller. where he condescends, just coming to earth. He comes down. It's like the form of a jay, and he to love others is really to die, he laid down his life, and but then there's that resurrection, the upswing of it, and we do that. That's what we're modeling every day, right? Or we're supposed to. So.
Is that the same Paul Miller of A Praying Life?
Yes. Yep.
Good words.
Really, really good stuff. Good book. The J Curve. The everyday. I think it's the everyday dying and rising of Christianity, or something like that, is the subtitle.
That is the real stuff right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to see what you just described as an SNL skit. Yeah, I'd like to see Will Ferrell as the Christian raising his hand, and then slowly that dawning realization of, wrong line.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the real stuff. And, I've been walking with the Lord for almost 40 years now. And there are still many, many days when I wake up and I'm questioning, God, am I doing the right thing? Where are you? Why is this not going according to my plan? And I'm wise enough, I'm experienced enough to hear the question. I'm to catch it. Oh, that's right. It's my plan. Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And I've learned to trust him. But I've seen, and I'm sure we have all seen, plenty of people, plenty of friends, plenty of strong people who were strong Christians fall away when that tree starts getting shaken. Mm-hmm. Not just in the everyday wind, right? But that hurricane comes.
Yeah.
And it just starts rocking that tree to the roots. And all of a sudden it's like, well, where'd they go?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Being grounded in the truth of who God is, of what he's called us to, the simplicity, but the lack of ease with which that simplicity is done. It's,
right.
If you don't have that, man, it's really, Jesus was completely, it's going to sound stupid to say, but Jesus was completely on the money, right?
Exactly.
He who hears my words and does them.
Just to follow up on that as well, that becomes a necessity when that hurricane comes, is to be able to map yourself, to kind of see, all right, here's where I am on the map, like you are here. To have an expectation that the hurricanes do come, and then to know, oh, here's where I am in that. Okay, so Jesus suffered, I'm suffering too. Okay, he says, like just to be able to find yourself and to realize, all right, God said that this would happen. I'm going to be okay. He's with me. This hurts a lot. God help me. It's just important, rather than to say, I didn't sign up for this. This is not supposed to happen.
Well, I think what you're saying is one is yielding and letting God be God, because he is in control, versus me being in control. I didn't sign up for this. This isn't what I want. Well, then I can judge, which isn't the right position. Only God can see the beginning from the end, so he knows what I need to go through, and I have to be willing to trust.
Yeah.
That's hard. Often we don't take the time, as you stated, to look at the track record that we have with God. When you talk about your life as a youth and seeing God bringing different mentors into your life and protecting you from different things, you can go through tougher things as you've grown in your faith to say, okay, the track record that I have with God is one where I can leap off of things. And that's what I tell people even about missions. I was like, you first need to start sharing your faith, like it's with family, friends, neighbors, before you take a trip around the country and turn it into Christian tourism. Do what you're supposed to do here first.
Yeah.
And then look, as you do that God will make it clear what he's doing in you, whether it really is missions locally, nationally, or internationally. Don't just assume because I love, Moroccan food that's where I'm supposed to go, or because I like the colors of the Egyptian flag. That's, or, I met some missionaries who went here, and so therefore I should go there. Very much as you started with your story.
Yeah.
I can have good intentions and have a good plan, but God's going to do what he does. And I shouldn't view that as a failure because I didn't get into missions. He's going to move me step by step. And if I'm following, genuinely following, then that's all that matters, is the relationship with him, not I'm super missionary, but no, I'm following. And so as I take on the pastor role, I'm doing it up to him. I'm following him. Not, this is a relationship, not just a self-indulgence of holiness kind of thing.
Right.
I'm seeking to make myself holy when I can't. This is all God's work, and he does a really good job.
Dave, I want to jump off for that just a second. And what you're talking about is, I think we it's easy to get this mixed up, because we can read the Old Testament, we can read the story of Gideon, we can read the story of Abraham, and we recognize in them this is not it might be Abraham's story, but the story is not about Abraham. It's about God's faithfulness. It's about how God rescued Abraham out of his stupidity. It's really easy to see that all through the book of Judges, but then all of a sudden we get to David, like, this is now about David.
But it's not. It's
never been. Exactly. And we make that mistake, and then we apply it to ourselves the same way. It's like, wait a second. No, this is the story of Jonah was not about how Jonah overcame his fear of other people. It's Jonah was an idiot, and God worked anyway.
And I would even say with David, we misunderstand often when it talks about David loving God or befriending God. God chose him first and made him for that position and time. So he's loving his own creation. This isn't I can make myself in the image of David so God can love me more. No, God did this. He did this. So this is a special thing, and I need to respect that. And yes, I can bring forth my best fruit for him out of service, but it is, how he created me. That is my best. And so I shouldn't try to be someone else when he has created me for this time, this place, to serve and love him in a special way. I honestly believe that most people get distracted by the lives of those that we seek to model, instead of realizing it really is the relationship we should model.
Right.
The relationship is what we should be picking up on and understanding from the forgiveness that we see in David, and then his ability to put his sin out there publicly in songs and other, he defined himself so that shame and guilt were not a thing for him, even though the culture was defined by it. He was going to be defined by his relationship with God, and that, to me, is mind-blowing. And so often we're focused on, 1, 2, or 3 things that we want to take and make our own, when I just need to be vulnerable and keep it simple. What would you say is one of the biggest things that's, helped you when you were a new believer or were young in your faith?
One of the things that, what was really helpful, I think, is to have those teachers in my life, youth pastor, Sunday school teacher. Just two people who stand out especially. One is a woman who was my Sunday school teacher, a lot of the times growing up, or she was a teacher at Awanas or something like that. And she would give us bubble gum for memorizing verses, And I'm like, oh yeah, I want the gum. All right. And she would, just teach us just basic truth, teaching us through the stories. And that stuff is foundational for me. I know those verses now. I didn't have to work super hard to memorize that stuff. And when I became a pastor, or when I, was in college, because I already knew it, So that created a foundation, basics of, scripture memory, the word, basic practices like that. And then another was my youth pastor. I preached my first sermon when I was 13, because it was a special youth Sunday. He worked with me for weeks to help me prepare a message. And, and it was just that's awesome. I preached, but that stands out to it gave me confidence that I can stand up in front of people and speak, and the Lord will use it, and so people like that, I think that was really helpful to have key people in my life. It challenged me on the music that I was listening to, the language I was speaking, And just, the lifestyle that I was leading. So it's a big deal.
Do you think that that's still going on? Like that challenging, that pressing in?
For myself or for
for the generations behind us.
You know what? I wonder sometimes, because everything has become politicized. And people, somehow Satan has put the wool over our eyes that you can't talk about politics so then anything that he attacks is politics. Huh?
I would say, is that political though, as far as you being able to correct someone, or?
It shouldn't be. But when politics is attached to something, then all of a sudden it becomes uncomfortable. So now we can't talk about sexuality. We can't talk about issues of, and I say that like that's what the fear is. And so people who are in those positions tend to just, everything's watered down. And so if I'm trying to work with a young man to talk about what does it mean to be a man, I gotta skirt around all of these things, so I can't say this or can't say that, or I'll raise these questions. So I wonder if
I'm sure no pun intended there.
Oh no,
exactly, definitely not intended. I wish I were that witty.
You talked about scripture memorization in the beginning, and so I know that there is there is the space to let the word do the work. And then I recognize what you're stating as far as being able to challenge some of the cultural things. And earlier on, you mentioned when you were sharing your story, just how God has provided you with what I would consider community. And I know, as you were answering, one of the things I was challenged with for most young adults, as we talked about the singles ministry and other stuff, and some of the changes in how the generation behind us engages, is that their definition of community, and you kind of both hit on it, is more focused on self. Like from a cultural standpoint, it really is not built to go through tough things. It's not meant to be defined by time as well as trials. It's meant to be defined by pleasantries and comfort. I do think that that's part of the issue when we talk about Jer, when you asked, is happening now? I think it is happening in certain pockets, smaller churches. I think one of the issues we have is that, we are close to the city and we are, a big church. But I think in rural areas, especially Midwest and other places, I hope that's taking place. I know one of my big issues, and I told you this the other day, Jer, is that I went to visit my grandmother's church down in the Carolinas, and was humbled by the emptiness of it. I assumed that everyone would be back in church because it was such a part of the community. And the fact that as soon as service was over, everyone flew out and there wasn't that many people to start off with. The fact that my son was one of 3 children there under the age of 10 was scary to me, because I remember it always being filled with babies and kids. Like, that was just a norm to hear in the message, as well as the engaging after, whether it was breaking bread or a baptism or, some fruit, or there was always something afterwards that allowed for people to have the opportunity, you're talking about, Lonnie, to rub shoulders and share life. And I don't see the time being given to that anymore.
Yeah.
I love my church, but as soon as the sermon is over, a couple hundred people are moving, cars are moving.
Yeah.
We haven't even done the final song and prayer.
No, I know what you mean. I want to be careful though, because sometimes I look at the world, I think like Elijah, right? Where he just ran and he's like, I'm the only one left. There's nobody else, and God's like, no, wait a minute. This is happening. He's always got his remnant. And I just think, like, I wonder, like, when I look back, when I visit the church that I grew up in, it's still a small church, still some of the same faithful people doing the same. Like, do they know the impact that they've had? I still look around and I see in our church now, I see I see people who have come alongside my kids,
Mm-hmm.
who say things, do things. And so I think, I realize that they can be, God is God. He knows how to reserve a remnant for himself. And so the right things are happening so that those influences can kick in and take place. And I think it's just a matter of, when we look at society as a whole, sometimes it's like, what is happening, but I don't know what to make of that all the time. But
I'm going to say a hearty amen to that. And I'll also just touch back on something you said, because I think it bears hearing. You didn't say this exactly, but when you talk about things becoming politicized, truth has become politicized. It's not just my sexuality, but my identity, who I am vis-a-vis the choices I make about my life is now called truth. And that's been politicized and even weaponized. And the challenge, I think, that I hear coming from you as it's exactly what Joshua rather said to the children of Israel. Choose this day whom you're going to serve.
Yeah.
This is what Elijah said. If Baal be God, follow Baal. But if God be God, if Yahweh is God, follow him.
Yeah.
That's the question that stands in front of us. And that's the question that we are responsible to humbly echo to everyone who's coming up behind us.
Yeah.
Just that simply, if God is God, then follow him.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It starts with speaking to the mirror, right? But I don't want to step on my own toes here.
Absolutely.
When it comes to your wife, how's she doing? Because I know you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. She's doing well. She is in remission, we've been married for 26 years now. So she has been for 19, 20 years. I think this was 7 years it was 3 or 4 years into our marriage. So yeah.
Wow.
And so, she's doing well. We just sent one son away to college. He's doing well. Because of her cancer, we didn't think we could have kids. And so God surprised us with him. 7 years into our marriage, we stopped expecting it, started to get used to the idea of a different trajectory. And then all of a sudden we're surprised with him. Didn't know that he was there until about week 24 or something. And
wow.
She felt something inside. She's like, something's not right. I got to go to the doctor. She's like, something is moving in me. It didn't even occur to us that it could be a baby. I was supposed to be able to have a baby. So
that's wonderful.
Great blessing that was. So.
Wow.
Now that you're leading in many areas and God continues to mature you and work on you and push you in leadership, what do you wish you had known, years ago when you came to Christ? Or what would you tell yourself if you could go back and drop a letter in the Bible or something? Absolutely.
I heard somebody say, choose your ruts very wisely and carefully because you're going to be in it for a long time. I wish I could have created some patterns for myself that, in terms of especially the spiritual disciplines, like, reading the word every day, and what it really looks like to abide in him, just the daily walk with him. It's not just checking off the box, that I did my devos. It's learning how to commune with God. He says, apart from me, you can do nothing. And to really believe that you think that when you put your own strength and your own talents and stuff together that, I produce something really good. And you could preach the most eloquent sermon or say the put together some words so nicely. And everybody's like, man, those are some good words. And it won't change any heart if God is not in it. Yeah. And so to really learn to believe that, and therefore to pray towards that end, that God would use me and work for me, and to develop a robust prayer life. I'm still learning how to do that and how to depend on God in prayer for the fruit. So those are a couple things. There's another thing that I'm learning about, the hardship stuff that we talked about, and again, just to remember that this is what you were made for. This is what you're called to die daily. And that, it doesn't always mean intense suffering. Whether you're speaking to somebody in a conversation and you're giving them your time or what, like, let's just say that you're sacrificing your time. There's something else you could be doing, but you're intentionally giving your time to someone else for their benefit. That's love. That's dying to yourself, So learning to see those opportunities and to seize them instead of complaining about them and be like, oh, this is an opportunity to be like Jesus again, whether it's love for others or suffering, or dying to my sin, I think that's another big one. And, and then just to remember that I was blessed to be a blessing. So don't just absorb your blessings, but let your light so shine before men that they see your good works and glorify God in heaven. And I've recently learned that God's blessing is not just his way of wishing you well when you sneeze. His blessing is effectual. It makes things happen. He blessed Adam and Eve and told them to be fruitful and multiply. So because of his blessing, they could be fruitful and multiply. And so it's effectual. It empowers and enriches. And so the thought that we've been blessed with every spiritual blessing in Christ means that he's given us the empowerment to accomplish the great things that he's called us to. So therefore, we need to get busy and do the stuff that he's called us to. We've been blessed for this. So I'm learning that and really appreciating that a lot. I wish I had understood that a lot better earlier on, so I wouldn't be so self-oriented. But my food is to do the will of the Father, oriented. And so, things.
Cool. No.
Andrew Murray wrote the book Absolute Surrender, and it was very instructive to me. It's a book I've gone back and read a couple times. Very much encouraging and going over just kind of needing these very points, especially when it comes to prayer and abiding in the vine. It's I wouldn't recommend everything Andrew Murray ever wrote, but I would definitely recommend Absolute Surrender. I haven't read everything he wrote, so this is hugely helpful and hugely encouraging. Dave, you have another question? Or you?
No, we're good. This is great.
This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
This has been fun.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity.
I've enjoyed getting to hear a lot of my siblings in Christ, just to hear their story and their journey. And it's one of those things where it's a treat to me to hear, because I've known you for so long. And it's a treat to hear, that how God has continued to work, but also how he has worked in your life. And it's encouraging. So thank you for sharing.
Yep, absolutely. You're welcome. Thanks for having me
so much, Lonnie.
All right.
Thank you, listener, for coming along with us. If you have questions, if you want to, we didn't ask you this, Lonnie. If you want to reach out, do you have any books? Do you have a podcast? Do you have anything that you want to put out here for people to check you out on?
No, I keep being told that I should, and I just feel like other people say it better.
The Lonnie Harris Dance-Off channel on YouTube.
I got a lot of starts to some stuff, some things I'm working on in terms of writing, looking at the anatomy of prayer, and kind of what all the prayers of the Bible sort of a thing. And but that's not ready yet. That's lots of notes and but no.
So we'll have to have you back. That's what I'm hearing here.
Yeah, have me back, and maybe I'll have something else I can put out there.
So if people do want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
You can do it at my email address, lonnie-harris at forcey.org. Forcey is spelled Forcey.
Gotcha.
That's probably the best way at this point. You can write the Forcey office, Forcey, it's probably best to reach out to my email. The church as well. You can call me at the church, which is 301-622-2200. And yeah, I would love to connect with, answer any questions anybody might have, or projects that people want to work on together and things like that. So
excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
A pleasure. Listener, thank you for joining us. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so at anchoredanddevoted@gmail.com. We enjoy having these conversations. I would ask you, dear listener, to, if you've enjoyed this, if it's been beneficial to you, would you share it with someone you want to encourage, someone you want to bless? Pass it on. Like you said, Lonnie, we've been blessed to be a blessing. Let's go be a blessing.
Absolutely. Amen.
We love you guys. We will talk to you all soon.